Bondex in the Bondex community here live from New York. Ignacio Palomera, the co-founder, and I'm here joined by a real-life wizard, Gareb Shamus. We're honored to have you. He's the CEO of Wizard Entertainment as well as one of the co-founders of Comic Con. But I'll let him do an introduction of himself, and then we'll talk about his exciting new project. Gareb, pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here. Always loving talking about superheroes. I've been in that business and that world my entire life, growing up collecting comic books and then starting a magazine called Wizard right out of college. And it just took off worldwide. So it's incredible where that magazine went and all the fans that we were able to build all around the world. And, back then it was not cool to be a geek or a nerd, that's for sure. And so we threw a little party for all the fans of the magazine, and we called it Comic-Con. And little did we know, 20,000 people showed up. And it was just this incredible, magical moment where all these disenfranchised people, we were the losers, the loners, the outcasts at the time, all getting together to have this big party around superheroes and comic books and the movies and television and toys. And it really just built all over the world to the point where my brother and I built 180 Comic-Cons. We've sold 5 million tickets and reached billions and billions of people. So it's really been an incredible journey here.
That's the origin story of Comic-Con?
Yeah. It was not even a business. It was actually just a party that we were throwing for the fans of the magazine. We're talking about the mid-90s here. So there was no internet. There was no social media. It wasn't like we could do anything on a mass scale. It was just anybody who read the magazine or heard about us, just came in, and people drove from literally 50 states. People drove in and they dressed up, and we encouraged people to dress up in costume. And it wasn't even called cosplay back then. It was just costume contests. And then the only way you could find out what people were doing were in the magazine, and the magazine was in 75 countries. So everyone around the world got to see what was happening in this little bubble. And it was just incredible how it grew from there.
That's incredible. And what I'm loving now that I'm realizing is that you've gone from traditional print to the physical world, now to obviously you got digitized, and now you're getting into NFTs. So you've done all the transition. You've been very adaptable and flexible and, adventurous and a pioneer many times over. So that's incredible. Congratulations for, having that type of vision. And, I'd love to talk about your NFT project now. So now, obviously, I guess you saw a new mechanism to spread superheroes and heroes in a new medium, right?
Absolutely. And you said it right, which is the evolution of superhero fans and the media that we use to build massive global communities. At first, it was through print and through magazines. And then when we were able to do live events, it created another whole way where we could bring the magazines to life. Then when social media and digital media came around, we could get rid of we can disintermediate, in that we can go directly to the fans now without people in the middle there. So digital and social media changed everything. And now Web3, blockchain, and the NFT world is going to do that again. And it's so exciting to bring superheroes into this new medium and to do the things that we couldn't do. So I started a company called HeroMaker with co-founder Scott Donnell. And I'm the multiplier and he's the simplifier. So we have all these big ideas, and we figure out how to make it really simple in order to do that. And the goal was that comic books really hasn't changed since I started, and it was all paper based. So we went with the premise of, what would a Web3 company do in the comic book world? And that just opened up every single new porous and opportunity to be able to figure out how can we affect the creator economy? How can we affect the fans? How do we engage community? And it really, everything about what it does is it extended everything that we had done our entire lives. And so we started HeroMaker Studios to create this entire new universe of characters. And we built this incredible Bible of what the world looks like. Similar to the way Marvel has its connected universe, we built our own version of that. We have over 30 franchises already in there, and they're all very different, but yet there's this connective tissue. And we're launching now, and we can get into it, but something called Kumite, which is our first NFT project that we're doing.
So that's
And
what I wanted to talk
we
about.
wanted,
I'm glad you. I wasn't sure the pronunciation. Kumite. I read the project. Super cool. Tell us more about it.
yeah, so we wanted to start with this epic battle between heroes and villains. And for anybody who's been a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan like I was growing up, there was a movie called Bloodsport that he was in where there was a tournament, and a fight tournament, and it was called the Kumite. And it's pitted all the heroes and the villains. And so I always grew up with that movie like, oh my God, that was like that tournament. So now what we did was we started something called Kumite, which is this epic battle where we have 24 families of heroes and villains, 12 heroes, 12 villain families. We have 240 unique characters that we created. And we started with the story. What's the battle? And that's everything at the heart of what HeroMaker is about. It's about storytelling and bringing people on this journey. So when we decided to do the NFT drop, we're doing the generative versions of these characters, but there's already this epic tale that's going to be told.
I know, and I love the narrative that I saw from the project, which is in a dystopian future where the corporations kind of own the world, right? And these heroes are going to go battle them out. And I love that because in many ways, Web3, right, is a disintermediation and kind of an empowerment of users and people to not, I mean, I'm not saying fight the corporations, but I guess create a new economy that is more peer to peer, right? And so I think it's very
Yeah.
fitting, right? The messaging and the narrative to it. So I love it. So tell us a little bit more about that. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, there's no question that we're living in an age where mega corporations are incredibly powerful, and they've been using AI. This now is set 30 years in the future, and they're using AI to solve not only global problems, but trying to achieve massive profits and global takeovers and things like that. So they set this AI in motion. And then the AI manifests into these heroes versus villains, where we have angels versus demons, right? So someone's trying to figure out the whole how do you stop climate change, right? And then it goes into these characters that are trying to save the earth, right? And then you have fairies and demons, and fairies and goblins and witches and warlocks and then we have heroes and supervillains. So we've kind of pitted all these AI families against each other into this tournament that's going to take place in the NFT world. So we've built in a lot of gamification into the NFTs. So once people buy the NFTs, that's not where it begins. It begins with the battles that start taking place. And we're going to use the stories to drive the narrative as opposed to the mechanisms of, just math, like how many we sell, how many we burn. It's really going to be the stories that take place that drive the interest in whether you want to be a hero or a villain or a angel or a demon.
I love it, and I was reading more about it. And again, yeah, it's not a profile-based kind of project. It's more of a play to earn and really metaverse and gaming play here, right? So the idea is that you're gonna have this battling, and you're gonna be tokenized as well. Tell us a little bit more about how that's all gonna work.
Yeah, so we started with ultimately where we want to be, right? I think a lot of people that I have felt in this industry started with incredible art, or they have incredible characters that they wanted to show, and then after the fact they try to figure out what the story is. In our world, we started with the idea that how are these characters and these franchises and these battles going to take place in the metaverse, and work backwards. So yes, gaming is a very, very big part of what we thought about with blockchain games, play to earn games, but also all the kinds of things that extend the experience, right? So it's all kinds of collectibles, whether it's comic books and toys and games, and how those can all extend the narrative. But the best part about it is that when you own the NFT, we're going to really engage the fans to create their own stories of their own characters. So rather than it just being a narrative that we tell, it's going to be a narrative that everybody tells. So imagine that Marvel right now is the only one who tells Spider-Man stories. But imagine if anyone who loves Spider-Man could tell Spider-Man stories, right? The universe would be completely blown open into where it would go. That's what we want to do with the Kumite universe of characters.
I really love that. I think that's a game changer. I've never heard of anything like that. It's very innovative, and that's kind of like how YouTube happened. You turn the users into the creators, right? So
Exactly.
if you turn,
Exactly.
that's genius. I've never heard of anything like that. I guess when you most NFT projects, and by the way, you're a first NFT expert. Most NFT projects just give you the story of your avatar. You don't get to make the story of yours. And I love that you're also inserting physical things like comics. And I guess there's no one else in the world better than you to execute this
Right.
multifaceted, multi-pronged, like kind of approach to an NFT project. I think people should be extremely excited. I'll be buying one, that's for sure.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. Yeah, a lot of people think that fan engagement and building community is about fans determining what what our story should be. And it's not. It's about what their story is. And when you think about like what we did at HeroMaker, our tagline is take the journey. So it's how do you become a hero? You have to take the journey. So our whole company is built around this idea of the hero's journey, that we start with the character franchises, and then ultimately people get the NFTs, and then they build their own communities, and then they build their own characters, they tell their own stories, and then they become the hero of their own universe. And what we're doing is we're setting it up so that everybody can become the hero of their own journey. And so it's not just their own story, but now all of a sudden they can, we're going to be able to, they can make toys and games, and there'll be lots of things that people will be able to do, and we'll support that community in building this global universe out there. And yes, everything that we're talking about with the governance token, and we want to get people involved. We want the community involved. And we're definitely going to create a lot of utility for people. And, to me, my number one creed is innovation. How can we innovate? How can we push forward? How can we do things for people that they've always wanted to do, but there was always some sort of limitation to that?
I love it. And talking about hero's journey, now I want to hear about your journey into the Web3. But before that, something about villains and heroes that I've come up on quickly that I love your opinion about, which is an insight I had never thought about. But villains and heroes usually have the same origin story. There's some sort of trauma and challenge early in their life, and they become villains or heroes out of their reaction to those circumstances. And when someone explained
Correct.
that to me, it blew my mind. So I would love to talk to a comic expert. This is completely off topic. I'm getting off topic, but I'd love to hear your
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, there's, the thing about heroes and villains is they both think that they're doing the right thing, right? So everyone thinks that a villain thinks he's doing the wrong thing, but no, he thinks, or she thinks, they're doing the right thing. And it does start with some sort of trauma, some event that a hero or villain has gone through, and how they deal with it is their response. So a hero, something that happens to them, their healing is how they do good out of that, how they help others. And a villain deals with that trauma in how they hurt others. And it's really that very singular distinction, that really drives a massive wedge between what a hero and what a villain is. And it's about helping others versus hurting others in terms of how they deal with that situation.
I knew you'd be able to dissect that for me incredibly. It's just fascinating. That's awesome. And I now want to talk about your hero's journey. What is your, and something we ask a lot of guests is, what is your Web3 origin story? I like to call them origin stories, like a hero's origin story. What is your Web3 origin story? How did you come up into blockchain? How did that journey start for you?
Well, I've always been a big fan of the blockchain and crypto. My brother started, he was actually a Bitcoin trader back in the early days, and then got hacked in the Mt. Gox scam that happened. So, I've been a big fan of it for a long time. And then it was within the last couple of years, really, that a lot more of my friends were getting really deep into not just buying and selling crypto, but also starting to do some really interesting things on the blockchain that I started noticing. And then it was really kind of like early last year, late the following year, where in late 2020, early 21, where a bunch of my friends were like, Gareb, you got to see what's going on in the NFT world. Why don't you just make some pictures and we'll sell some NFTs? And I was like, I don't know how to do something small. Like, I've never been successful doing something small. It was like, well, what's the biggest thing that we could do? What's like, how do we kind of build something to, affect people all around the globe. And that's really where I started to understand a lot more about it. And it wasn't just about, selling, JPEGs or selling NFTs. It was really, what is the underlying application of it? And how can we use that as a way to affect everyone around the world? And that's really how HeroMaker was born.
I love it. That's a good mission and vision to execute, and I wish you all the luck in the world. And I think it's fantastic. And one thing I wanted to ask you now is, Bondex is the leading Web3 professional network, and what we want to do is, in a ways, demystify what working on an NFT company is, and drive more adoption and conversion of people working in traditional industries to come here, right? So, what are some of the roles and what are some of the skills that one should be looking to get in order to get hired by a company like yours, for example?
I think a lot of it is really the basic two things. One is the basic understanding of what Web3 is and what the technology can do. So all the kinds of things that we were talking about, understanding it. And it's not so much the programming side of it or the actual writing code side of it, but what are the real applications of it, and how that can really affect a lot of people. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is to really be a part of the community and really start engaging with other people and other friends, start learning, start meeting people. I've been very blessed in my life to meet so many people, and I couldn't have started this without the idea that I already knew, thousands of people in my network that I could reach out to and say, hey, have you heard of this? Can you help me? And really reach out to your friends and connection network. So I really encourage people to reach out to friends and build networks out there, because it's going to be invaluable now and way into the future.
Absolutely. I think there's an arbitrage now where the supply of people with these skills for Web3 is limited. And so they're going to be able to really monetize them. And there's just no losing in being on the cutting edge and learning those skills. But so, and correct me if I'm wrong, in my understanding, if I look at an NFT project like yours, I would probably divide it into 3 verticals professionally. There's probably marketing, right? Which you need to know, like, the latest methods and techniques of how to promote an NFT project. There's the tech of building the smart contracts, the utility, later on the gaming, which then it gets really complex development, right? And then there's the art, right? There's creative roles there for design. Is that more or less what the composition of a team would look like?
Yeah, yes. And then as we start migrating into the future, obviously the tokenomics and how the utility and the token side of it and the execution on that is going to be critical as well. Yeah, I mean, a lot. And then, there's a lot of management, involved in that, and really community building, and then, there's going to be so much of what we do to engage fans. So I wouldn't lower expectation of having people internally, whose sole job is to make sure that the fans have a great experience. We've always overinvested in my career in just having people extra around to make sure fans have the best experience, because they're your biggest advocates out there. They're the ones that are going to shout from the rooftops, that they love your product or they hate it or they had a great experience or they didn't. So it doesn't take a lot of extra work to make sure that people walk away with a great experience. So I wouldn't underestimate the value of investing in that.
I completely agree with you. And actually, we're working with a partner that's actually helping us with our own NFT project to exactly community building, user acquisition, and build utility within the Bondex ecosystem. And I'm excited about it. And listen, we're approaching the end of an interview, and we usually like to take this measuring test of people's kind of, we talk to thought leaders like yourself. They're usually more on things that are tokenized, but I want to ask you about the current NFT market. What do you think? And it doesn't have to be prices. It can be the state of the technology, its leadership. What are some parting thoughts that you can leave us with about what your thoughts is of the current environment?
I love it, because it's so exciting. You have so many people that are in it together to try to do something incredible, extraordinary, and everybody that's in it knows it's going to be something that's really, really big in the future. and figuring out what the best ways to build audience or to build great characters. But it's definitely going through an evolutionary period right now where, what's next, right? People love the imagery, people love the all the 3D art, the characters that are being created. It's great, but then now what? And it's all about creating a roadmap, especially like what we're doing, where it's very realistic in terms of what you could bring to the fans and the community. And I think the answer to that is storytelling. There's nothing that gets people more engaged and loving your characters and more interested and excited than being able to take people on that journey. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that be a critical element to any NFT project.
I completely agree with you. I guess NFTs as a technology was kind of like blockchain 10 years ago. First, it gets released into the world. People get excited. There's maybe overhype compared to the value that is actually brought. And now the same things happen with NFTs. And now you have to figure out utility, right? And like some real value beyond just imagery. And I think that's where we're headed. And it's about having strong roadmaps and strong teams to execute them. So I encourage everyone that's excited, number one, to check out Kumite, one of the most exciting NFT projects I've come across. And number two, start thinking about potentially, if you're in the creative, if you're like a storytelling narrative, if you like superheroes, you should be looking to a career in NFT. And more particularly, you should be looking at Kumite and Gareb's company. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time. And I want to thank for the community for joining. I hope you had a great time today. And thank you, Gareb, for coming with us.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a great week.